BK Chemicals Limited manufactures BXE by mixing three raw materials. So here BXE is nothing but the finished goods which is manufactured by making use of three different types of raw materials. For each batch of 100 kg of BXE, 125 kg of raw materials are used. So what is the standard input output ratio? In order to manufacture 100 kg of finished goods, we are expecting to use 125 kg of raw materials, which means if your input is 125 kg, your output will be 100 kg. In June, 60 batches are prepared to produce an output of 5,600 kg of BXE. So in the month of June, we produced in 60 batches and the total actual output is 5,600 kg of BXE. The standard and actual particulars for June are as follows. So here we are using three types of raw materials in order to produce BXE. We are using raw material A, B, and C. The standard mix is 50% of A, 30% of B, and 20% of C. Standard price per kg of raw material is given 20 for A, 10 for B, and 5 for C. The actual mix of the raw material is 60% of A, 20% of B, and 20% of C. Actual price per kg of raw material is given 21 rupees for A, and 8 rupees for B, and 6 rupees for raw material C. Quantity of raw material purchased in kgs it is given. So here what is important to understand in this question is, in order to calculate material price variance can be calculated using either quantity of raw material purchased or quantity of raw material consumed. But however, first preference should be given to quantity of raw material consumed. Why? Because only then this equation will tally. Material cost variance should be equal to material price variance plus material usage variance. This equation will tally only if we are using quantity of raw material consumed while calculating the material price variance. Instead of using quantity of raw material consumed, if we are using quantity of raw material purchased, then this equation will not tally, right? So here quantity of raw material consumed is not directly given, so that is something which we need to calculate. So let's start with the first working note, and the requirement of the question is to calculate all variances starting from material price, usage, material cost, material mix, and material yield variances. So let's start with the first working note. Working note 1. Let's calculate the standard output first. In the question, it is mentioned that for each batch of 100 kg of BXE, which means for every one batch, we are expecting to produce 100 kg of finished goods, right? So let me write it over here, batch and finished goods. For every one batch, we are expecting to produce 100 kg of finished goods. In the month of June, we actually worked the actual number of batches is 60 batches. So in one batch, if you can produce 100 kg of finished goods, then for 60 batches, how many kg of finished goods we could have actually produced? So by just simple cross multiplication, we can calculate that the standard output is 6000 kg. So working note number 2. So here 6000 kg is the standard output. But for producing this standard output of 6000 kg, we should have used some amount of raw material, right? So what is that standard input for this standard output? So working note 2 is standard input for standard output. So this is nothing but in order to produce this 6000 kg of finished goods, how many kg of raw material we should have actually used. So in this question, the input output ratio is directly given. If our input is 125 kg, the output will be 100 kg. So let's write it over here. Raw material and finished goods. If the input is 125 kg, the output will be 100 kg. right? So by making use of 125 kg of raw material, if we can produce 100 kg of finished goods, then in order to produce 6000 kg of finished goods, how many kg of raw material we should have actually used? So again, by simple cross multiplication, we can calculate that the standard input is 7500 kg, which means if we have to produce 6000 kg of finished goods, we should use 7500 kg of raw material. Now, this 7500 kg of raw material is nothing but the 100 percentage or the total quantity of raw material, which includes raw material A, B, as well as raw material C. Now, let's see how many kg of raw material A is there in this, and how many kg of raw material B is there, and how many kg of raw material C is there in this 7500 kg. So standard quantity of raw material A, standard quantity of raw material B, and standard quantity of raw material C. So the 7500 is the total standard quantity, out of which the standard mix is 50% of A. So out of the total standard quantity, 50% is coming from raw material A. So 7500 is the 100 percentage, out of which 50% is coming from raw material A. So when we take 50% of 7500, we get 3750 kg. So out of this 7500 kg of raw material, 3750 kg of out of the 7500 kg of raw material, 3750 kg of raw material A is expected to be used. Then standard quantity of B will be 7500 into the standard mix of B is given as 30%. So 7500 into 30%, we get 2250 kg. And same 7500 into standard mix of raw material C is 20%. So 7500 into 20%, we get 1500 kg. So these are all the standard quantities of raw material A, B, and C respectively. Now let's solve the third working note. Working note 3. Actual output. So during the month of June, how many units or how many kg of BXC we actually produced? We produced 5600 kg of BXC, which is directly given in the question. So actual output is nothing but 5600 kg. Next, working note number 4. Standard input for actual output. So in the month of June, we actually produced 5600 kg of finished goods or 5600 kg of BXC. For producing this 5600 kg of BXC, how many kg of raw material we should have actually used? So that is what we are going to calculate. The standard input for producing this 5600 kg of finished goods. So again, let's take the input output ratio. In order to produce 100 kg of finished goods, we are expecting to use 125 kg of raw material. Then in order to produce 5600 kg of finished goods, how many kg of raw material we should have actually used? So 5600 into 125 divided by 100, we get 7000 kg. So the 7000 kg is nothing but the standard input for actual output, which means in order to produce 5600 kg of finished goods, we should have used 7000 kg of raw material. But did we actually use 7000 kg of raw material? That we don't know. So that is what we need to calculate next. Working note number 5. Actual input for actual output. So in order to produce 5600 kg of finished goods, we should have used 7000 kg of raw material. But how many kg of raw material did we actually use in order to produce this 5600 kg? So that is what we are going to calculate. So actual input for actual output. So in the question, it is mentioned that For each batch of 100 kg of BXE, 125 kg of raw materials are used, which means for every one batch, we are using 125 kg of raw material. So batch and raw material. For every one batch, we are using 125 kg of raw material. And in the month of June, actually 60 batches are prepared, right? So for one batch, if you are using 125 kg of raw material, then for 60 batches, how many kg of raw material we have actually used? So 60 into 125, we get 7,500 kg of raw material. So in order to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods, we should have used only 7,000 kg of raw material. But we actually used 7,500 kg of raw material to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods. So again, I'm repeating, in order to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods, we should have used only 7,000 kg of raw material. But did we actually use 7,000 kg of raw material to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods? No, we actually used 7,500 kg of raw material to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods. So now there is a difference of 500 kg, right? So we should have used 7,000 kg, but we actually used 7,500 kg. Why did this, like, how did this 500 kg of difference came? So listen, for every one batch, we are expecting to produce 100 kg of finished goods. So let me perform the working over here. So for every one batch, we are expecting to produce a finished goods of 100 kg, right? Then in order to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods, how many batches we should have actually worked? So for one batch, if you are producing 100 kg of finished goods, then for 5,600 kg, we should have worked only 56 batches. But did we actually work in 56 batches? No. In the month of June, actually, we took 60 batches. So we should have completed the work in 56 batches, which is nothing but the standard. But actually, we took 60 batches to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods. So this is the actual. So we worked extra 4 batches, right? And in the question, it is given that, again, for every one batch, we are expecting to use 125 kg of raw material. Then we worked extra 4 batches, right? For 4 batches, what is the amount of raw material that we have consumed extra? So 125 into 4, we get 500 kg. So there is a difference of 500 kg. So the standard is 7,000, but the actual is 7,500. So the difference of 500 kg can be explained due to the usage of extra 4 batches. I hope it is clear. Now the 7,500 kg is the actual amount of raw material consumed to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods. So this is nothing but the 100% of raw material consumed, which includes raw material A, B as well as C. Now from this, or out of this 7,500 kg, how many kg of raw material A is consumed, how many kg of raw material B is consumed, and how many kg of raw material C is consumed? So actual quantity of raw material A, actual quantity of raw material B, and actual quantity of raw material C. The actual mix is given in the question. It is 60% of A, 20% of B, and 20% of C. So 7,500 into 60% is 4,500 kg. So out of the 7,500 kg of raw material, 4,500 kg came from raw material A, and 7,500 into 20%, we get 1,500 kg. And for raw material C also, it is 7,500 into 20%, we get 1,500 kg. So out of 7,500, 4,500 came from raw material A, 1,500 from B, and another 1,500 from raw material C. So now we have all the figures, or we have all the relevant figures for calculating the variances. So let's start with the first variance, material price variance. The formula for material price variance is standard price minus actual price into actual quantity consumed. So here we have three different types of raw material. So we have to calculate the price variances separately for each of the raw materials. So material price variance of A is equal to standard price of A minus actual price of A into actual quantity of raw material consumed or actual quantity of raw material A consumed. So what is the standard price of A given in the question? It is rupees 20 per kg and actual price is 21 per kg. So standard price is rupees 20 minus actual price is 21. And actual quantity of raw material A consumed is 4,500 kg. So multiplied by 4,500. So we get negative 4,500 because 20 minus 21 is minus 1 into 4,500. We get negative 4,500. But instead of writing it as negative 4,500, we can write it as 4,000 rupees adverse. And why it is adverse? Because we expected to purchase raw material A at rupees 20 per kg, but actually we ended up purchasing it for rupees 21 per kg. We paid extra 1 rupee, so it is an adverse variance. Similarly, material price variance for raw material B, standard price of B minus actual price of B into actual quantity consumed of raw material B. So standard price of B given in the question is rupees. Standard price is 10, actual price is 8, and actual quantity consumed is 1,500. So material price variance of B is equal to 10 minus 8 into actual quantity consumed is 1,500. So we get positive 3,000. So it is rupees 3,000 favor. Then material price variance for C. Again, I'm not writing the formula. We can directly solve it. Standard price of C is rupees 5 per kg and actual price is rupees 6 per kg. So 5 minus 6 into actual quantity consumed is 1,500 kg. So standard price is 5 minus actual price is 6 into 1,500. So we get negative 1,500. We can write it as 1,500 rupees adverse. So second requirement of the question, material, but before that, wait. But before that, let's write the total price variance. So total material price variance is equal to, it is 4,500 adverse and 3,000 favorable and 1,500 adverse. So when we add everything, so it is negative 4,500 plus positive 3,000 and negative 1,500. We get rupees 3,000 adverse. And one more important point. So here we have actually consumed 1,500 kg of raw material C during the period. But when we look at the question, we purchased only 1,200 kg of raw material C. So how can we consume more than what we purchased? Right. So it is assumed that this 1,200 kgs are consumed and the remaining 300 kg came from the previous period or opening stock of the June, right? So next, material quantity variance. So the formula for material quantity variance is standard quantity of A minus actual quantity of A into standard price of A. So here we have three different raw materials. So we have to calculate the quantity variance separately for each of the raw materials. So here we have calculated the standard quantity of A, which is 3,750, and actual quantity of A, it is 4,500. Can we directly compare this 3,750 and this 4,500? No, it cannot be compared because this 3,750 kg of raw material is the standard quantity for this 6,000 kg. So it is standard input for standard output, right? But did we actually produce 6,000 kg during the period? No, we actually produced only 5,600 kg. So standard output is different, actual output is different. So we cannot directly compare this 3,750 kg and this 4,500 kg. So what we need to do is we have to calculate the standard for the actual, right? So first let's calculate the standard quantity of raw material A. So raw material and finished goods. So in order to produce 6,000 kg of finished goods, we are expecting to use 3,750 kg of raw material. So we are getting these numbers from working note 2, which is standard input for standard output. So standard output is 6,000 kg. So in order to produce 6,000 kg of finished goods, we are expecting to use 3,750 kg of raw material A. So in order to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods, how many kg of raw material A we should have actually consumed? So 5,600 into 3,750 divided by 6,000, we get 3,500 kg. So this is the standard quantity of raw material A for producing 5,600 kg of finished goods. So this standard quantity is nothing but standard quantity or standard input for actual output, right? But did we actually consume 3,500 kg of raw material A? No, we actually consumed 4,500 kg of raw material A to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods. And standard price of A is directly given in the question. It is rupees 20 per kg. Now let's apply the numbers in the formula and get the answers. So material quantity variance for raw material A is equal to standard quantity is 3,500 minus actual quantity is 4,500 into standard price is 20. So it is negative 1,000 multiplied by 20. We get negative 20,000. Instead of writing negative 20,000, we are writing it as 20,000 adverse. And why it is adverse? Because we should have used only 3,500 kg of raw material A to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods. But we actually consumed 4,500 kg of raw material A. So it is an adverse variance because we consumed more raw material than what we supposed to consume actually. Similarly, calculating material quantity variance for raw material B, the formula is standard quantity of B minus actual quantity of B into standard price of B. So here we are going to follow the same procedure again. First, let's calculate the standard quantity of B. So raw material and finished goods. So in order to produce 6,000 kg of finished goods, we are expecting to use 2,250 kg of raw material B. So from where we are getting these figures? Again, we are getting these figures from working note 2. 2,250 kg of raw material B is expected to be used to produce 6,000 kg of finished goods. So then in order to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods, how many kg of raw material B we should have actually consumed? So standard quantity of B will be equal to, standard quantity of B is equal to 5,600 in 5,600 into 2,250 divided by 6,000, we get 2,100 kg. So we should have consumed 2,100 kg of raw material B to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods. But actually, we did not consume 2,100 kg of raw material B to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods. Actually, we consumed only 1,500 kg of raw material B. And we are getting this actual quantity figure from working note number 4. Actual quantity of raw material B consumed is only 1,500. And standard price of raw material B is equal to rupees 10 per kg, which is given in the question. Now just apply the numbers in the formula. Material quantity variance of B is equal to standard quantity is 2,100 kg minus actual quantity is 1,500 into standard price is rupees 10 per kg. So it is 600 into 10, we get rupees 6,000, which is positive, so it is favorable. And why it is favorable? Because we should have consumed 2,100 kg of raw material B as per standard, but we consumed only 1,500 kg of raw material B. So it is a favorable variance. Then material quantity variance for raw material C. The formula is standard quantity of C minus actual quantity of C into standard price of raw material C. Again, similar procedure, standard quantity of raw material C is equal to raw material and finished goods. In order to produce 6,000 kg of finished goods, we are expecting to use how many kg of raw material C? It is 1,500 kg of raw material C. Then in order to produce 5,600 kg of finished goods, how many kg of raw material C we should have actually consumed? So it is 5,600 into 1,500 divided by 6,000. We get 1,400 kg is the standard quantity of raw material C. So the actual quantity of raw material C consumed is 1,500 kg. So which came from working note number 4. And standard price of raw material C is given in the question, which is rupees 5 per kg. So now just apply the numbers in the formula. Material quantity variance of C is equal to standard quantity is 1,400 minus actual quantity is 1,500 into rupees 5. So it is negative 500. So we can write it as rupees 500 adverse. So let's calculate the total material quantity variance. So it is material A, it is negative 20,000. And for raw material B, it is positive 6,000. So minus 20,000 plus 6,000. And for raw material C, again, it is negative 500. So again, minus 500. We get rupees 14,500 negative, which is 14,500 at this. So now let's do the third requirement of the question. Material cost variance is equal to material price variance plus material quantity variance. So material price variance we already calculated, which is rupees 3,000 adverse plus material quantity variance is 14,500 adverse. So rupees 14,500 adverse. So material cost variance will be rupees 17,500 adverse. Fourth requirement, material mix variance. So the formula for material mix variance is revised standard quantity minus actual quantity into standard price. We are having 3 raw materials. So material mix variance of A is equal to revised standard quantity of A minus actual quantity of A into standard price of A. So first, let's calculate each of the components of the formula separately. Revised standard quantity of A. So what is the formula for revised standard quantity? It is actual input into standard mix. Standard mix of raw material A. So what is the actual input? We already calculated the actual input as the total actual input is 7,500, which we calculated from working note number 5. So in working note number 5, we calculated the actual input is 7,500. Now to this 7,500, we have to apply the standard mix, which is 50% for A, 30% for B, and 20% for C. So revised standard quantity of raw material A will be equal to 7,500 into 50%. We get 7,500 into 0.5, we get 3,750 kg. So what does it mean? It means that as per standard mix, we should have used only 3,750 kg of raw material A in order to produce the 5,600 kg of finished goods. So this is the standard mix, which is 50%. But did we actually use 3,750 kg of raw material A? No. Actually, we consumed 4,500 kg of raw material A. The standard price of raw material A is directly given in the question, which is rupees 20 per kg. So now we have all the relevant figures. So just apply the numbers in the formula. Material mix variance is equal to revised standard quantity is 3,750 minus 4,500 into standard price is 20. So we get 3,750 minus 4,500 into 20. We get negative 15,000. So we can write it as 15,000 rupees adverse. Similarly, material mix variance for raw material B. The formula is revised standard quantity of B minus actual quantity of B into the standard price of raw material B. So revised standard quantity of, first let's calculate the revised standard quantity of raw material B. Revised standard quantity of raw material B is equal to, again, actual input into standard mix of raw material B. Standard mix of raw material B. Again, actual input, we already know it is 7,500 kg and standard mix of raw material B is only 30%. So when we take 30% of 7,500, we get 2250 kg. So this is the revised standard quantity. So as per standard, we should have used, as per standard mix, we should have used 2,250 kg of raw material B, but actually we used 1,500 kg of raw material B. And the standard price of raw material B is given in the question as rupees 10 per kg. So now just apply the numbers in the formula. Material mix variance of B is equal to standard quantity is 2250. Sorry, revised standard quantity is 2250 minus actual quantity is 1,500 into 10. So 2250 minus 1,500, we get 750 into 10, we get rupees 7,500. It is a positive figure, so it is favorable. Then material mix variance of raw material C is equal to revised standard quantity of C minus actual quantity of raw material C into standard price of raw material C. First, let's calculate the revised standard quantity of raw material C. Same formula, actual input into standard mix of raw material C. So RSQ of raw material C will be equal to 7,500 kg is the actual input into standard mix is 20%. So when we take 20% of 7,500 kg, we get 1,500 kg. So this is the revised standard quantity of raw material C. What is the actual quantity of raw material C consumed? That is also same 1,500 kg. Now, why there is no difference between the revised standard quantity and the actual quantity? Because when you look at the question, the standard mix is also 20%. The actual mix is also 20%. So there is no difference between the standard mix and the actual mix. So there is no material mix variance, as simple as that. So actual quantity and revised standard quantity for material C is both 1,500 and 1,500. Standard price of raw material C is rupees 5 per kg. So now just apply the numbers in the formula. Material mix variance of raw material C is equal to revised standard quantity is 1,500 and actual quantity is also 1,500 into 5. So we get 0 into 5, which is 0. So now let's calculate the total material mix variance. For material mix variance for A, it is 15,000 negative. So negative 15,000. And for raw material B, it is positive 7,500. So negative 15,000 plus 7,500, we get negative 7,500. For raw material C, there is no mix variance. So the total material mix variance will be rupees 7,500 negative. It is nothing but 7,500 rupees adverse. Now let's do the final part of the question, material yield variance. The formula for material yield variance is actual yield minus standard yield into standard costs per unit of finished goods. So material yield variance. Oh, okay. So let's calculate each of the components separately. So actual yield in this question is directly given, which is 5,600 kg. And what is the standard yield? So let's calculate the standard yield. For calculating the standard yield, let's take the input-output ratio, raw material and finished goods. So in order to produce 100 kg of finished goods, we are expecting to use 125 kg of raw material. Then by making use of 7,500 kg of raw material, how many kg of finished goods you could have actually produced? So it is 7,500 into 100 divided by 125. We get 6,000 kg, which means by making use of 7,500 kg of raw material, we could have actually produced 6,000 kg of finished goods, but we produced only 5,600 kg of finished goods, which is less than the standard. Next, the third component of the formula is standard costs per unit of finished goods. First, let's calculate the standard cost. The formula for standard cost is standard quantity into standard price. But in this question, we have three different types of raw material. So the total standard cost will be standard quantity of A into standard price of A plus standard quantity of B into standard price of B plus standard quantity of C into standard price of C. So the total standard cost is equal to, what is the standard quantity of A? We have already calculated the standard quantity of A. The standard quantity of A is 3,750 kg. Standard quantity of B is 2,250. And for C, it is 1,500, right? And most importantly, don't take the standard quantity of A that we calculated while doing the material quantity variance, because this standard quantity of raw material, which we are getting 3,500, right? While doing material quantity variance, we are getting the standard quantity of A is 3,500. This 3,500 is the standard quantity for actual output. But we have to take the standard quantity for the standard output, which is from working note number 2. Standard input for standard output we have to take, not the standard input for actual output. So standard quantity of raw material A is 3,750 into standard price is 20 plus standard quantity of B is 2,250 into standard price of B is rupees 10 per kg, and standard quantity of raw material C is 1,500 plus. Yeah, standard quantity of C is 1,500 into standard price of C is rupees 5 per kg. So now when we calculate the total standard costs, we get 3,750 into 20, it is 75,000 plus 2,250 into 10, we get 22,500 plus 1,500 into 5, we get 7,500. So total standard cost is, when we add all these numbers, we get 1,05,000. So this 1,05,000 is the standard cost for how many kg of finished goods? 1,05,000 is the standard cost for 6,000 kg of finished goods. But in the formula, we need the standard cost per unit of finished goods. We want the standard cost per unit of finished goods, right? So here, finished goods and costs. So if the cost of 6,000 kg of finished goods, if it is rupees 1,05,000, then what is the cost for 1 kg of finished goods. So just cross multiply. So 1,05,000 divided by 6,000, we get rupees 17.5 per kg. So this rupees 17.5 per kg is nothing but the standard cost per unit of finished goods. So now we have all the relevant figures. So let's apply the numbers in the formula. Material yield variance is equal to actual yield minus standard yield into standard cost per unit of finished goods. Actual yield in this question is 5,600 minus standard yield is 6,000 into standard cost per unit of finished goods is 17.5. So it is negative 400 into 17.5. We get rupees 7,000 adverse. Why it is adverse? Because as per standard, we should have produced 6,000 kg by making use of 7,500 kg of input. But we actually produce only 5,600 kg of output by making use of 7,500 kg of input. So we produced less than the standard. So it is an adverse variance, right? Now we can check whether the answer is correct or not, because material quantity variance should be equal to material mix variance plus material mix variance and material yield variance. We know the material quantity variance is how much it is. We got rupees 14,500 adverse, and material mix variance it is material mix variance 7,500 adverse. So it is rupees 7,500 adverse, and material yield variance is rupees 7,000 adverse. So 14,500 adverse is equal to 14,500 adverse. The numbers are matching, so all the three variances are correct.